In today's video, we're going to be using Semrush's SEO Toolkit to check out the HOA SaaS space and see what it might take to compete in this space. I like to use videos like these as real-world examples as to how you can use Semrush's SEO Toolkit to run quick analyses into digital spaces and see whether or not it would be something where you'd want to explore an organic or paid strategy to acquire more customers. The inspiration behind this is really coming from a place where I stumbled upon a listing for an HOA SaaS company that was for sale. And from there, it kind of took me down this rabbit hole that I'm now going to take you on as well. This video is sponsored by Semrush. Thanks so much for their partnership. Before we jump into Semrush, I wanted to start with where this story begins, which is I was on Quiet Light and I noticed that there was a 7-year HOA SaaS company for sale at 700K ARR and 115% NRR, which is really good. It's also growing 70% year over year. And so this is something where, the space is obviously profitable enough that there's probably been a couple companies that have spun up in this space. So that led me down this rabbit hole where I first started by searching HOA SaaS platform. And then I started looking for funding of PayHOA because I noticed that PayHOA seemed to be the big player in the space. And I found that, lo and behold, PayHOA has raised $27.5 million in Series A as recently as last year, and they were once previously profitable and bootstrapped. And that's where we then begin our journey in Semrush's SEO Toolkit. So I've gone ahead and logged into Semrush. I've gone into the SEO section and gone into domain overview. And the first thing you always want to do is just plug in the root domain of what you're looking for. In this situation, the first thing I always look at is the response in the overview section, a few quick things and commentaries that I can share with you based off of what I'm seeing right off the bat. The first thing that you always look at is the authority score. And as Semrush teaches you here, this is really the domain's reputation. It's how they think about all these different factors, such as the quality of backlinks, the organic search traffic, and the overall authenticity of the page. What this also tells you based off of past websites that I've fed through Semrush is that, this is probably a space where honestly, from an organic search standpoint, it's not all that hyper competitive. And the reason why I say this is because PayHOA is this company that's raised a ton of money in the space. They seem to be doing pretty well. However, they only have an authority score of 33, which is honestly not that high. Just as a comparison point, you can check out something like Intuit, where Intuit has an 87 authority score. So very, very different in terms of the realities of this respective space when we think about PayHOA. So when you're looking at the authority score, what I want you to look at is if it's something below 50 or so, it's honestly not that crazy competitive of a space. It's in many cases a niche space. And then when you're really talking about big businesses, you'll typically see that those authority scores go up quite a bit. Or if you're looking at something like a news site, so for example, I love sports. So if you're ever checking out ESPN, for example, you'll see that that authority score is super high, which means it's super credible for what it does. All right, so after we've checked out the authority score, I like to check out the organic search traffic. Again, this is not crazy high, but it is something to be notable of because they do get 13.6K on average in the estimate from Semrush in terms of their organic search. This is just a general estimate based off of Semrush's calculations. I've always found there's some variance when you use, Semrush or any other tools out there on this, but it is directionally correct. And so what this tells me when I see something that's in the tens of thousands for organic search is that it's probably a decent assumption to assume that PayHOA gets a good amount of traffic from organic search. This usually means when we start digging into the keywords later on this video that they are getting a bunch of either branded phrases, non-branded phrases, a mix of different things as to how people are landing on their page. But what really stands out to me when I look at this overview section is I see that there's even more search traffic coming from paid search. So to me, what this suggests is that overall, the strategy of PayHOA right now is probably more heavily investing into paid, which makes sense because if it's anything like that TechCrunch article suggests, they just raised money a little over a year ago. And so they're probably looking for ways to grow quickly. And one of the easiest ways you can do that is by investing in paid. The last sections that I like to look at in terms of this overview section are the backlink section as well as the traffic share section. So in the backlink section, you can see that there is at least 1,500 referring domains. That's really good. It means that there are 1,500 unique different domains that are linking back to PayHOA. And we can see that the traffic share section kind of confirms what I already suspected, which is PayHOA, when it comes to an organic search standpoint, gets a lot of the traffic for this HOA SaaS platform space. And we can see the next competitor of theirs is probably HOALife.com, followed by Run HOA, and there's a very small company as well, Easy HOA. We'll check them out in just a little bit, but I always like to kind of look at this top section to give me a quick rundown of things. So how might this look if this wasn't interesting to me? Well, what would tell me that this is really not that interesting space for a potential business and whatnot is, for example, if this authority score was 5 or 10 or something like that, it's probably a new site that doesn't have all that much reputation. If the organic search was not over a couple thousand, then they're probably not getting all that much traffic from organic search. So they might be acquiring customers some other way. And then for the paid search side of things, this tells me already a lot about their story because it's already a large majority of the traffic that they're getting right now is from paid search. But what I'd like to look at then from there is where is most of the traffic coming from, because this will also tell you the basis for this business. In this case, we can see that the distribution is 99% US-based traffic. That's really good because US-based traffic is usually some of the most valuable traffic as well. So it tells me that's probably a US-based business as well. And what I like to do is I like to check out Semrush's different charts here because, we have high variance on the paid side. I'm going to go into that story in just a little bit. I want to look at first just the last 1 year to 2 year mark of the organic search. And you can see that they've been steadily investing more and more in organic traffic. You can see here they used to be at about 6.5K and now they're all the way up to 13.7K. So it's pretty much a double at this point in terms of where they were a few years ago. Great progress from the Pay HOA team. On the flip side of that story, you can see that they've changed a lot as well in terms of their paid strategy. So if I look at this, you can see how they weren't really investing in paid at all before 2024. That makes sense. They were a profitable bootstrapped company. But after they raised money, it seems like they've been investing more and more into their paid strategy. And now you can see as recently as the last few weeks, they've been investing a ton more into their paid side. So that's just telling me a high level story of, okay, in the past, it seems like organic was a factor in terms of how they've been growing, and paid has been increasingly a factor over the course of the last year, especially after that funding round that we just talked about that landed in the mid part of May. In fact, you can actually time this in which you can see how, around May is when that round closes or gets announced. And that's really where, when we look at the 2-year trend or the 1-year trend too, all the major investments come after May in terms of the paid traffic. And this is very normal in terms of what you'll see if you ever look up other people's websites on Semrush. Next, what I like to look at is I like to look at the organic keyword section. So this tells me just in general what is going on in their content marketing strategy and things like that. So what I like to do is I like to isolate usually for things like the top 10 and see how that's been changing over time. So when we take a look at this top 10 strategy, you can see how, again, going back to about a year or so ago, we can see that they had 56 top 3 placements, and now they have close to 140. So it's been almost a 3x on top 3 placements. You can also see in terms of the 4 to 10 spots, 231 versus earlier, 123, still growth there. So overall, what we've been seeing is, not surprisingly, with organic growth, which we did see, because when we isolate that for the last 1 year or even the 2-year trend, we saw that their organic growth has close to doubled. And you can see that more or less in that same time period, as we look to May here, 2.5K versus 1.2K. It's pretty much 1-to-1 correlation. And so what you can take away from this is typically if you're seeing your organic SERPs change, so your keyword placement starting to move up, then not surprisingly, your organic traffic moves up as well. So now we've taken a look at these quick top 2 sections in the overview tab. Let's dig into the organic research tab. So in this section, I like to look at what are some of the top keywords that this company is relying on. In this case, I see there's a bunch of branded phrases, so like Pay HOA login. I also see that right now there's a bunch of site links, there's some AI overviews, which is great. And then I also see a bunch of things to know sections. But what I also find interesting here is that there's a bunch of informational content here. So what I like about Semrush's SEO Toolkit is that they categorize everything for you on a first pass. So I can tell that a lot of this organic strategy relies on informational content. So people that might be asking questions like, what are HOAs or what are HOA fees and things like that. There might be navigational things, which are just helping them find things like Pay HOA login. And if you look here, you can kind of see how Semrush already categorizes these for you. So you can see here with Pay HOA, this is navigational because this user wants to find Pay HOA. And then in the case of the login, because there's the word login, it tags it as not just navigational, but also transactional. And so there's all these different insights that Semrush will automatically pull for you, which makes it great in terms of just getting a quick look into what's going on with this respective company. The other case that you'll start to see is you'll see things like commercial intent, transactional intent. We'll dig into all of that when we dig into the organic research section here. But what I also like to look at is I like to look at, okay, how much of their traffic is branded versus non-branded. So in this case, 3 out of 4 traffic from an organic standpoint is coming from branded phrases. So this tells me that this brand probably has built up a decent following. They're pretty well known in their respective space, and that's why 3 out of 4 is coming from branded phrases as opposed to non-branded phrases. What I like to do when I look at these respective spaces, I actually like to compare this with other companies. So if I wanted to check out some of these other companies, I would plug in their companies into HOALife.com or runHOA.com, for example. If I want to just like open up some of these, I can see and compare, okay, in this case, what this already tells me when I look at a competitor of, the first company, PayHOA, I can see that HOA Life in comparison has maybe a third or so of the organic search traffic of PayHOA. The authority score is lower, traffic share is less, and I can also see their backlinks is less because again, it was at 1.5K referring domains before, and now this is even fewer with 300. And I can also see that if I go down here, branded phrases is 4.1% versus 96% non-branded. So this already tells me what I was assuming coming into this, which is PayHOA is really the dominant player in this space. They not only own the organic search traffic, but they also own this really strong moat of a brand because they get so much of their traffic from branded phrase versus non-branded. So this tells me that they probably have more customers as well than an HOA Life or a Run HOA and so on. When it comes to Semrush's SEO Toolkit, one of the final sections I really like to check out is this bottom section here on main organic competitors, because what this will tell you is it'll tell you more about this space really, really quickly. And it's always the fastest way that you can identify who are some of the big players in this world. So right off the bat, I can just click these, and then what'll happen is it'll open up new tabs for this, and it'll just tell me here are some of the organic competitors. Here's how they relationally compare to the site you're looking at. So in this case, I can see PayHOA is the big player here. That said, Vantaka is pretty big. HOA Life is up next. SmartWebs is a little bit up there, but we got these tiny ones in Run HOA as well as Easy HOA. And when I start to look into these, what I'm then doing is I'm trying to figure out what are some of the common patterns that these companies are using in terms of getting traffic into their site. The bottom line is that traffic is the lifeblood of every online business. If you don't get traffic, then nobody's going to buy your product. And so in this situation, this will just give me a good understanding of like all these different sites. And actually, what I suspect, I haven't confirmed this, but what I suspect is that actually this listing for this 7-year-old HOA SaaS company is selling HOA Life. And the reason why I say that is because if you go to the About Us page, you can see that they've been running for 7+ years, 1,000+ communities. And when I looked at them on LinkedIn, I saw that they only had a handful of people. So very lean company selling on this site. It seems more likely that it's them than it does that PayHOA is selling right off the bat. All right, so before we dig into the organic research tab, I want to wrap up with this domain overview section with some key takeaways. The first thing is check out the authority score. Is it really high? Is it really low? How does that compare with others in the space? With this sort of company at a 33, it means that it's somewhere probably with the niche, SaaS software space. It's not super low though, but it's also not super high. So it could be a space where organic has a place to play in. Organic search traffic, how much traffic are we getting related to organic search? In this case, it's a decent chunk, especially in the context of the overall space with a 59% traffic share. Paid search, are they investing anything in paid search? The question you should be asking here is this going to be a space in which I need to pay to play in terms of getting traffic? In this case, it seems to suggest that in the last year, PayHOA has been investing more and more in paid search than they were previously. What's the traffic distribution in terms of the country? Is this US-based traffic? Is it international traffic? Look at specifically what are the trends over the last 2 years in terms of organic traffic compared to organic keywords. And then we want to look at the organic research section. What are some of the keywords that are popping up? What's the distribution of those keywords, as well as the intent of those keywords? We compared, for example, branded versus non-branded traffic of, how authoritative has this brand built up their own presence compared to other competitors in the space? Because we compared that to that other site where it was only 4% branded traffic, which means that, PayHOA is definitely the big boy in terms of the overall space here. All right, now that we've done that, we're going to check in on the organic research tab. So I've gone over this in a couple other videos on my channel, but just to kind of give you a high level overview of what to look at when you're in this section, first thing I always look at is what is the trend line? Like what's going on in terms of the last few years of this site. And I can see that they've really been investing in organic search. Over the last 5 years or so, they've gone from pretty much nothing in organic search all the way up to, the point where they've gotten close to 3,000 total keyword placements. And then what I like to do from here is I also like to check out what are some of the SERP features that are coming up for why people are finding PayHOA. So in this case, I can see this emerging trend over the last 2 years or so, in which it's aligned with respect to what Google has been doing as well, which is you can see how there's been more and more people also ask coming up, as well as AI overviews, right? Because Google is really pushing these AI overviews out. And so this is really helpful because it'll help you understand what are things that Google themselves is saying is good enough for an AI overview. And then you can start to create content that's based off of that. So in this case, if I want to look at some of these keywords and I isolate for the SERP features, what I really like is I like looking at just like what it's going to come back to me with, and then isolate for the different things that might be coming up here. Something I've always appreciated about Semrush is their quick ability to filter through things, especially when it comes to their organic research section. And so in this situation, what I can do is I can check out the SERP features and then just isolate for AI overviews. And this will tell me all the different cases where AI overviews are showing up. I'm going to search HOA management software, and now you can see how what's going to happen is PayHOA comes up right here. See that? So this is Semrush telling me what people are searching for, as well as what's showing up in AI overviews, so that if I were a content marketer, for example, trying to rank for more of these respective things because there's traffic behind it, you can see 131 estimated. What this will tell me is I can focus on these respective areas. So what do I gather from this? Well, I gather a ton, actually. I look at this and I see that there's a bunch of AI summaries around XYZ software. So this would already cue me in that I should create a ton of content around HOA software, helping educate people around that, because this is all informational intent and it's all showing up in AI overviews. If I want to increase my chances as PayHOA in terms of getting on these top placements, then what I want to do is I would want to be building more and more content that will also have a high probability of showing up in AI overviews. So when you're going into the organic research tab, what you want to do is you want to regularly look at what are some of these things that are standing out to me in terms of the different positions that I have in place, or what are the things that this competitor has if you are doing competitive analysis. The other thing I like to do is I like to filter down for things that are low competition, as well as non-branded phrases. So in this case, I'm actually going to exclude keywords of PayHOA, as well as I'm going to exclude keywords for PayHOA with a space, since I know that's already going to be a common one. And what that's going to tell me is it's going to tell me all these other keywords that are still interesting or valuable to PayHOA, and I want to be looking at what are some of the commonalities or trends from this. And so in this situation, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to sort by keyword difficulty. Something I've always loved about Semrush, I've been a user of Semrush for over a decade, is that they filter things based off of different difficulty scores for you. And they also explain to you exactly what that means for you. So in this case, for example, a difficult phrase is going to need a lot of referring domains and optimized content in order to rank for it. Whereas this possible is probably going to be able to rank with just well-structured and unique content versus something easy, for example, where you might just need quality content that's focused on the keyword's intent. And so I've always appreciated this about Semrush. I've taught different methods in the past in my other videos, but a general rule of thumb that I like to start out as a starting block is 40 or less is definitely a good place to start when you're starting in a new space. And so when I look at this, I can see that there's decent traffic coming in from this phrase, homeowners association management software. Not surprisingly, that is the homepage of PayHOA. But you'll also see some other trends. And what I like to do is I like to look at what are the low competition places, because this will tell me where I can potentially grow my traffic even further at a minimal sort of effort standpoint. And so in these cases, what I'm seeing is a couple interesting trends. The first thing is that PayHOA seems to build subdomain sites for the HOAs that are using their software, and they rank pretty well, honestly, for them. And then also I can see there's a bunch more software phrases, not surprisingly. Again, there's those subdomains. If I go to the site, I bet you it's going to be the actual site of this HOA, which it is. What I'm gathering pretty much is there's a ton of brand specific traffic. This is not surprising to what I was thinking about before. But also, if I were a competitor of PayHOA, then what I would be learning about this is if I'm not building subdomain sites for my respective customers, then I'm losing out on a search opportunity, because I'm seeing that PayHOA is getting a decent chunk of, traffic here from these different communities, Vero Beach, Lake Gaston, etc., that are all using their software. So that's a great opportunity right there that I spotted by using the organic research tab in Semrush. All right, so at the risk of this video getting really long, just to recap the organic research section, what I like to do is I like to look through what are some of the top positions in terms of the domain I'm looking at. What's the volume of those? I usually like to look for things that have at least 100 or more in terms of search volume. Keyword difficulty, I like to look for low opportunities first, so easy opportunities before looking at more difficult ones. And then I showed you how to use some of these different SERP feature sections just to kind of understand directionally what's going on in terms of where Google is placing more and more emphasis. This is going to be increasingly important over the course of the rest of this year. And then I also showed you really quickly how to use advanced filters to just quickly isolate through all these different things without needing to, for example, export it out into Excel and run your own filters. Ultimately, the TLDR is this: Semrush SEO Toolkit is the ultimate platform when it comes to simplifying your keyword research, running competitive analysis, as well as thinking about site optimization. What I love about Semrush is that it really helps marketers at any level, whether you're beginner, intermediate, or advanced, make informed decisions, save time, as well as drive measurable growth. So if you've never checked it out before, you can create a free trial account in the video description below. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and you thought it was interesting to run through with me a look over my shoulder of learning a little bit more about the HOA SaaS space. I'll catch you guys next time.